Agriculture on PEI is such a complex issue. I think anybody, though, who would look at agriculture would say one of the biggest problems is nitrates. So we're getting nitrates from fertilizer. The nitrates are making our small rivers anoxic, in other words, no oxygen, impacts on the fish. There's a bigger problem, though. We have the problem of nitrates getting into the water supply. Currently, we have at least 10% of the wells on PEI affected by nitrates, and as the ground gets saturated with nitrates, it will only be more in the future. Even if we stop today, we would have an ever-increasing nitrate problem. So, to keep farmers on the land, I think, again, the bigger problem is looking at what farmers are doing on the land. And potato production, the way we do it now, is a problem. It has to be looked at. And if we can subsidize something like the beef plant to the tune of about $2.5 million a year right now, we can look at subsidizing sustainable farming practices, organic farming, and things that would actually help farmers make money. The fact of the matter is that there are very few farmers on PEI right now outside of egg production and the dairy industry who are making anything at all. So I think it's time to have a hard look at what we do, realize that we're already subsidizing farmers, and change it around so that we have better farming practices that are sustainable.
We are recovering from one of the worst global crises in recent history. So jobs in the economy continue to be the biggest issue facing islanders, I believe. And as you know, we have a seasonal economy here. So our low tax policy as a government strengthens the seasonal businesses, and we also have a strengthened EI system. That's why I've lobbied hard to have two of the most important EI programs, which are the best 14 weeks and working while I'm playing, extended. In fact, it was in our budget of 2011. But more than that, we want to see good long-term sustainable employment here, and jobs like that will be starting at the Catch Certification Office in Tignish, the good jobs that we have at MDS Coating Technologies in Slemon Park, and the growing aerospace industry there. By lowering taxes, I believe we are creating an environment that will create jobs for islanders.
There are a couple of issues here in Egmont that need attention right away. One of them is lobster prices. We've seen in the last 5 years the price of lobster drop to record lows, and this is not good. The fishermen need the price. They are our frontline workers out on the waters, and they need the price to be able to make a living. And if we don't get them the appropriate price for their lobster, we'll see more lobster fishermen getting out of it. And this affects more people than just the fishermen. This affects hundreds of families right here in Egmont. And we need to work together, all levels of government and fishermen associations. We need to work together to develop a creative plan in order to see the price go up. I think we've seen the lobster trap buyback program, which has been very successful. That is a key example of governments working together with the fishing industry, and we need to do the same thing about lobster prices. I think it's time to sit down and have a look and talk to the fishermen and see why they think that the prices are down. The other issue is employment insurance, which I think needs to be looked at. We don't know if this best 14-week pilot program is going to be extended past June. The government has not been clear on it. We need to look at these programs to ensure that our families here in Egmont can take full advantage of these programs, and that they can raise their families in a comfortable environment.
It is extraordinarily difficult to choose just one issue. I would have to choose jobs, though, for Egmont. The single largest creator of jobs is small businesses. Those such as bakeries, hair salons, restaurants, ones that can't just up and leave the country. The Conservatives are giving subsidies across the board, even to large corporations that do not need these subsidies. Manufacturing and industrial jobs are not a good fit for Egmont. Primary resources is the answer for Egmont, I see as well. Either way, Jack Layton wants to stop the subsidies for large corporations and give to small businesses that prove that they can keep jobs in Canada. Also, we will decrease credit card processing charges. That's another example of large corporate tax cuts, even though they made billions in profits.
Yeah, I think the most pressing issue overall is sustainability. I think there's very few things that we're doing right now that are sustainable, be it, as we mentioned before, farming practices, mining, if we wanted to look at tar sands. So sustainability, we're just going to have to change what we do. The wage gap situation in this country is huge. It's getting wider all the time. The rich are getting much richer, the poor are getting much poorer. It has to be addressed. This can be addressed by doing something as simple as saying there is a multiple and the highest paid person in any company cannot make more than 10 times the wage of the lowest paid person. The Green Party also advocates something like a guaranteed annual income so that every person in our society is at a reasonable amount of money so that they can perform all the things they have to do in their life. I think after that is just the basic democratic deficit in this country, in that a huge amount of power is concentrated now in the hands of the Prime Minister's office. Most Canadians understand that their own MP has absolutely no power on the big scene. Cabinet ministers, like the cabinet minister that I'm running against, Gail Shea, most Canadians understand that Gail Shea has no power whatsoever. An example of that would be bottom trawling. The Conservatives will not stop. So the Conservatives will not support the ban on bottom trawling because bottom trawling is good for corporations, and corporations are what gets parties like the Conservatives at $1,000 a plate dinners. That's what gets them elected. So I would say those are the biggest problems that we have right now. Is the sustainability generally, the wage gap, and the ever-increasing democratic deficit in this country.
You know, job creation, I guess, is probably the most important factor in keeping our young people on Prince Edward Island. We've invested in things like bioscience, and bioscience produces many good-paying jobs. I've had the opportunity to talk to people who are actually moving here from other provinces to work in our bioscience field. Companies like MDS Pred, like Vector Aerospace, like jobs that have been created with green energy technology. Those are all very good paying jobs. Since we have few natural resources here, we don't have, of course, the oil sands, but we do have renewable energy, plenty of wind. I believe that's an area that could grow. What we also have to do too is ensure that the fishery remains sustainable, that agriculture remains sustainable. So by diversifying the farm industry and providing more opportunities and more stability within the fishery, such as the expansion of aquaculture, I believe creating more jobs, and these are good paying jobs that more youth will choose to stay here.
I think our youths are crucial to the future and for the prosperity in Egmont. But I think we should ask ourselves, what can we do to bring them back? Not exactly what can we do to keep them from moving away, because I think it is important to leave for a year or two and go see what's out there. A lot of them have to leave to go to post-secondary, to go get a post-secondary education, but it's important. We need to look at ways to get them back here on the island, create the opportunities for them to come back and work in their own communities. I know when I was in Ottawa, I was grinning to come back home to PEI. However, I couldn't simply just go home without a job. And there's a lot of our youth population that's in that boat right now, and it's not fair to them. If they sincerely want to come back and live in their communities and raise their families in their own communities, we need to give them those opportunities. That means that governments need to work with the different municipalities. We need to work with places like Holland College and see what are the best options and the best tools for us to bring them back home. A great project that we're seeing right now is Holland College going up in the Alberton area. I think that's great. We'll be able to train our frontline workers right here in Egmont, and that's great, and we need more examples and more success stories like that.
In Egmont and all of PEI, there's a terrible drain with our youth leaving to get jobs. Opportunities are scarce here, and we need to change that. The main primary resources must be supported to keep jobs for not only youth, but everybody in Egmont. Fishing is especially in dire straits. Our current fisheries minister gave away the industry to a single processor, for example. Competition has been eliminated and fishers are paying for this daily. If we address these issues and the government properly retires licenses, then maybe more youth will have a future here. Currently, the Conservative government was only able to retire around half of the licenses. The rest, what ended up happening, is 10 traps were taken from each, well, we're talking about the lobster fishery here. And what happened is they were allowed to buy their traps back, but had to pay for them to such an extent that only the fishers that were already doing well were able to buy them back. So we need to have the rest of the program funded to retire those licenses and make room for the youth to have a better living here. But a bigger part of this would be small business grants. One thing that Jack Layton wants to do is give a grant of up to $4,500 per hire for small businesses that prove that they can keep jobs in Canada.
Go.
I think we understand that the reason that youth move from Egmont primarily is lack of opportunity. So the question is how to bring opportunity to Egmont, and that goes back again to the sustainability issue and having programs in place that are reasonable. Imagine if we had something like a organic farming component to the high school stream, and every year there was somewhere between 50 and 100 high school students across PEI that were graduating high school with a concentration of studies in organic farming. They were actually working on a local farm that the school board operated, something like that. These young potential farmers might actually have a reason to stay. You could do similar things in the fishery, for example. You could build a Japanese immersion link and have people, young people, start studying the fishery and Japan at a much earlier age and make connections and be tied to the island. So I think it calls for a different model if we want something that's sustainable, a model that will allow people opportunities to make money here in Egmont.